As the New York Rangers' chances of making the playoffs continue to fall with their losses piling up as of late, there is definitely a big question that will have to be answered in this upcoming offseason if the New York Rangers' first round pick does fall within the top 13 picks in this upcoming 2025 NHL Draft. The Rangers are going to have a big question to answer on whether or not they are going to keep that top 13 2025 protected first round pick that the Rangers dealt away in that trade where they ended up seeing obviously JT Miller, Eric Brandstrom, and prospect Jackson Dorrington come over to the Rangers where they sent off that first round pick, Philip Hedl, Victor Mancini, and obviously that ended up, so far, I would say, we're looking like a pretty decent trade there. Jackson is a solid defense prospect for sure. He has joined the Hartford Wolfpack. He's definitely a promising player. Then you've got, obviously, the main piece there, JT Miller, who I think has looked like a pretty great player for this team at moments, that's for sure. So I think overall, it was definitely a pretty smart trade by the New York Rangers, but giving up that first round pick and it being top 13 protected, it makes things a little interesting there where if this pick does fall within that top 13, the Rangers do have the choice on whether or not they would want to give up that pick, even if it is somewhere in that top 13 of this year's draft. So we're going to kind of talk about that in today's video because I think it's actually a pretty important kind of decision to make for this franchise because it opens up some potential kind of different opportunities in this upcoming offseason if they do end up deciding to kind of give away the 2025 pick, even if it does, let's say, fall within that top 13. So let's get right into it here. And first off, like I said, this pick was given up in that JT Miller trade where the Rangers got back, a decent defense prospect there, and Jackson Dorrington. Eric Brandstrom was no longer with the team. He was dealt away for Obey Kubel, depth forward. And the Rangers, obviously, the main piece they got back was JT Miller. We saw Philip Hedl go out the door now, who he's already suffering some injuries with Vancouver. So I hate to say it, but it was kind of a smart trade there by the Rangers to make this trade happen. And although I did like Philip Hedl a lot as a player, and I definitely still do, and I hope he can have a nice, long, healthy career, those injuries and kind of concussion problems are definitely going to play a big kind of impact on the rest of his career. And we've already started to see it with the Canucks there, with him already missing some time. So personally, I think it's really sad to see, and I hate to see it, but it was the right move for the Rangers to try and use up as much value as they can out of Philip Hedl there. They got back a true potential kind of franchise piece in JT Miller. They got back a decent kind of prospect there, kind of swap in Victor Mancini and Jackson Dorrington. So I think overall, it was a smart trade for the Rangers. I hope Hedl can have a nice long career with the Canucks, but it definitely is not looking like the most likely scenario after already seeing another concussion or upper body injury happen so far. But after the Rangers did trade that first round pick away and obviously Philip Hedl and Victor Mancini over to the Vancouver Canucks, we ended up seeing that first round pick eventually get dealt over to the Pittsburgh Penguins, where the Vancouver Canucks sent Dan Heinen, Vincent Desharnais, Melvin Fernstrom, the first round pick that the Rangers gave up for JT Miller, and the Canucks ended up getting back Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor, where they ended up extending both those guys almost right away there. Marcus and Drew O'Connor both got new extensions there, which, good for the Canucks there, obviously locking up some guys who would have been pending UFAs, but that means the Rangers' first round pick is now in the hands of the Pittsburgh Penguins, a division rival, which doesn't completely change the scenario here, but it changes it a little bit, obviously in the back of my head as a fan at least, as you definitely don't want to see the Rangers end up giving up a kind of high-tier draft pick over to the Penguins, and I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. I don't think that's the most likely scenario. It's just obviously still a possibility, which you definitely would not want to see, and it would definitely suck a lot more giving up one of those kind of high-tier first-round picks over to the Penguins instead of at least a Western Conference team. But carrying on, though, and kind of diving into more of the kind of pick protections here. So the pick is top 13 protected in the 2025 draft. So in this year's draft, the Rangers, if it is in the top 13, they can keep it. And if it's 14 through 32, then obviously that pick is guaranteed 100% to go to the Penguins. But if it does fall in that top 13, the Rangers would have the option of either keeping that pick or deciding to give it away in this year's draft. So even if it does fall within, let's say, the 10th pick, 11th, 12th, or 13th pick, the Rangers can opt to either, keep it or possibly send it away so that the Rangers get their 2026 first instead of automatically giving up that pick unprotected over to the Pittsburgh Penguins. And that is kind of where I really kind of question what the Rangers are going to decide to do, because the Rangers already, they do have a decent amount of draft capital for this upcoming draft. Now, it's nothing insane compared to some other teams, obviously, but it is a decent amount there. The Rangers have their own second-round pick. They've got the Kraken third. They've got Anaheim and Colorado's fourth. They've got a Wild fifth, and they've also got 2 sixths the Rangers own, and a Kraken sixth, and the Rangers own seventh. So they do have quite a few draft picks in this class, which it is quite nice. So I think that's kind of a nice thing for this team. They already have a decent amount of draft picks, and by all accounts and most kind of report and scouts and all that kind of stuff that from what I've read and all that kind of stuff there, it doesn't seem like this is the best overall draft, especially kind of depth-wise. I think the top 6 or 7 kind of prospects are very, very good and are potential kind of, top 6 forwards. And then you've got Schaefer there, could be like a top 4 kind of D-man. But after that, it definitely seems like it falls off quite a bit. There's no elite kind of true number 1 prospect in this class that's, by far, like a Macklin Celebrini, a Connor Bedard, a McDavid. There's no one of those kind of guys in this draft who are kind of the absolute clear number 1. There's kind of 5 or 6 guys you could really argue at this point still for first overall. So there's a group of really solid kind of half a dozen prospects, but after that, it does kind of fall off there to where around that kind of pick 10, 11, 12, 13 spot, it might not even be as good as the, let's say, pick, 15, 16, 17, 18 pick, let's say, in next year's draft potentially, or even maybe 20. Maybe the 20th prospect in next year's draft is actually going to rank higher on the Rangers board than the kind of 11th, 12th, or 13th in this year's draft. We don't know, but on paper, it does seem like next year's draft is a lot deeper and a lot better of a class overall compared to this one, where after the top kind of, 6 or 7, it kind of seems to drop off a decent amount. So there definitely is a big question there on whether or not the Rangers would rather kind of give up this year's pick in a not amazing draft class where you're not able to get more than likely one of those kind of true kind of higher-end guys in this class. You already have quite a few draft picks there. You have a second, a third, 2 fours, a fifth, 2 sixths, and a seventh. That's not too bad there. And then also means you would have your 2026 first-round pick that would not be going out the door to the Penguins unprotected, which is a little sketchy. If an injury happened to Igor and this team kind of fell off a cliff, you definitely want to have that pick. I'm not saying it was likely to happen or I want it to happen, but that is just a possibility. So I think the Rangers have a really kind of tough decision here. And, if it does fall with that pick for the Rangers in the 2025 draft being, pick 11, 12, or 13, or even number 10, you definitely have to have that conversation on whether or not you would rather just give up the pick in this year's draft to have it for next year, where you could obviously potentially use that pick in a trade maybe, and maybe a team would want that 2025 pick more because they exactly know where to be in this class. So let's say it fell at number 11 there, you could still use that pick and kind of trade it away possibly to go out there and get a piece, because we do know the Rangers are going to want to be active. So who knows? But I just think if you obviously opt to send out this year's pick instead, then you know what you have for next year. You have your first round pick there, and other teams can obviously potentially go and trade for that if the Rangers wanted to make some major upgrades, which I definitely expect them to do. So maybe it kind of allows for a bit of an easier trade, obviously, if you end up sending out that pick in this year's draft instead of next year. So you have that 2026 pick to use in a trade. Who knows kind of what the decision will be for the Rangers, but it just is an option there for this team where if it does fall on pick 10, 11, 12, 13, it definitely might not be the worst idea to opt to use this pick and send it over to the Penguins instead of next year's pick, which it would 100% become unprotected. So if something crazy happened in a draft class where the 2026 one, it is absolutely loaded, especially at that number 1 spot. The number 1 pick being Gavin McKenna. This is not a Connor Bedard level guy. This is not a Macklin Celebrini level guy. This is a guy who it was a higher tier. He is a better prospect, as of right now at least, at minimum, than guys like Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini. We know how talented those guys are and how much potential they have, and Macklin's obviously lighting things up with the Sharks down there being on a bad team. Bedard's had his kind of struggles there, but obviously you can't blame him a whole lot there because of how bad that Blackhawks team is. So you take a look at kind of how good those players are, and you kind of see how good Gavin McKenna is. And I am by no means saying I want to see the Rangers be that bad, and you still have to go through the draft lottery, but it just, there's that chance where the Rangers, let's say, fell off a cliff next year, the moves they make in this upcoming offseason doesn't work out there, Igor gets hurt, maybe they have a new coach there, it doesn't work out at all, or they keep Laviolette, and it turns out terrible there. Who knows? But let's just say the Rangers kind of fell off a cliff next year and ended up being a really bad team, a bottom 10 team, and they ended up winning the lottery there and somehow give that first to the Penguins. I mean, that would be the absolute worst scenario in the world, right? So I'm just saying here, it is definitely an option for this team to give up that pick, even if it is in the top 13 there. It's going to be a tough decision, but I definitely think it could end up being the right one to give up this pick, even if it is around that kind of 10 to 13 range there. It might make sense for this team. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content. And also, definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on this kind of situation here. Do you want to see the Rangers give up their, first round pick in this year's draft or next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'll catch you next one, and let's go Rangers.